My friends, listen closely. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is the quietest form of power a human can hold. When you stopped talking, you didn't just close your mouth. You closed an entire emotional universe they were feeding on. You didn't just walk away, you pulled the oxygen out of their atmosphere. Now they're gasping, but they can't even explain why. You didn't disappear out of fear, you disappeared out of clarity. That's the moment when true detachment begins. When you realize your peace is more important than proving your point. You see, folks, people get addicted to your emotional presence the same way the body gets addicted to caffeine. At first, your energy gives them a high, every text, every reaction, every ounce of care. But when it's constant, it becomes normal, predictable, expected. Predictability kills desire. The moment you stopped responding the way you used to, their system crashed. Their ego tried to process it like it was nothing, but the mind knows better. You removed the daily dose of validation they didn't even know they were depending on. Now their brain is replaying your silence, trying to understand what broke. Here's the truth that most people won't tell you. When you go quiet, the power dynamic flips. Words are noise. Silence is structure. Noise feeds ego, but absence feeds curiosity. And curiosity is far stronger than attraction. The human mind can't stand an unfinished pattern. It needs completion. It needs a reason. When you stopped explaining, they lost the script. They can't predict your next move, and that's what drives them wild. You became an unsolved equation their thoughts keep returning to, night after night. Let me put it like this, folks. You were their emotional oxygen. They took deep breaths of your care, your patience, your availability. Now that air is gone, and they're choking on their own pride. That's why they suddenly post more, pretend they're happy, or act like you never mattered. They're suffocating, but too proud to admit it. Every little thing you gave them, your words, your presence, your energy, became a structure their emotions lived inside. When you walked away, that structure collapsed. They don't miss you because they lost a person. They miss you because they lost balance. Silence is the death of emotional availability, and that death forces rebirth. For you, it's peace. For them, it's panic. You stopped existing in their emotional economy, and now the market is crashing. The things that used to hold value, their pride, their options, their control, don't mean the same anymore. Because value only exists when attention flows, and you've shut that faucet off. Every moment of your silence is teaching them something their ego never wanted to learn, that peace can't be chased and presence can't be demanded. So, my friends, don't let anyone tell you your silence means you stopped caring. It means you've mastered your reaction. You've learned that not everything deserves a response. You've realized that the most intimidating sound in the world is the one that comes after your last word. You didn't lose anything. You simply stopped investing in what couldn't grow. And that's power. That's stoicism in its purest form. Calm, detached, and untouchable. If this message is hitting something deep inside you right now, don't just sit there scrolling. Pause. Seriously, take a breath and let this truth settle in your chest. You've been silent, but not powerless. You've been calm, but not weak. That's not apathy, that's evolution. And if you can feel that shift, the moment when peace starts feeling better than proving yourself, I want you to mark it right now. Go to the comments and write, "My silence speaks power." Don't just type it like another quote. Claim it. That's your line in the sand. That's your moment of no return. Because the second you understand that your stillness has weight, that your absence has impact, you become untouchable. You stop being a participant in someone else's chaos and start being the storm they can't control. You're not falling behind, you're rising above the noise. That's what real strength looks like, my friends. Calm, focused, unbothered. So do it. Drop that comment, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. We're not chasing anyone anymore. We're mastering silence. We're moving with reason, not reaction. Say it again as you type it. My silence speaks power. That's your new truth. And from here on, that's your edge. Number 1. The emotional economy collapsed. They got used to free attention. My friends, let's talk about something most people never realize until it's too late: the economy of attention. Every relationship, whether romantic, emotional, or social, runs on a kind of currency. It's not money, it's energy. It's the time you give, the words you send, the care you offer. Each message, each favor, each little moment of checking in, that's a deposit. At first, it feels mutual. It feels like exchange. But slowly, almost without noticing, you start investing more than you receive. They get used to your attention, the same way someone gets used to free things. They stop seeing its worth. That's emotional inflation. When something valuable becomes constant, it loses its shine. You might ask yourself, why did my kindness start feeling invisible? Why did my consistency turn into background noise? Because human nature, as Carl Jung once said, feeds on opposites. It needs contrast to feel alive. When something becomes predictable, the ego stops valuing it. Your availability became the wallpaper of their emotional world, always there, always reliable, too easy to reach. They stopped feeling gratitude because your energy felt infinite. But the truth is, no one values what they believe can't be lost. Then one day, you pulled back. You stopped over-explaining. You didn't send the good morning text. You didn't check in just to prove you cared. You went quiet, and whether you realized it or not, you triggered a market crash in their emotional economy. You were the supplier of validation, the investor of effort, the emotional architect, and when you withdrew, the entire system collapsed. Their ego, which had been bloated with attention, suddenly faced scarcity. It's funny how people only start to feel the weight of your presence when it's no longer there to hold them up. Think of your attention like gold. When it's rare, people guard it, protect it, and chase it. When it's everywhere, they treat it like dust. They had a vault full of your energy, your patience, your reassurance, your effort, and they spent it recklessly, assuming there would always be more. But when you stopped showing up, that vault didn't refill. Their emotional spending caught up to them. Suddenly, your silence became a recession. Their self-esteem dropped, their pride lost value, and now they're facing emotional bankruptcy. You might think, but if they didn't care before, why would silence change anything? Because silence doesn't just remove noise, it removes access. And access, my friends, is the foundation of power. The human brain reacts to loss with far more intensity than it reacts to gain. Psychologists call it loss aversion. We fear losing something we took for granted more than we ever appreciated having it. So when you vanished, they didn't just miss you. Their entire emotional system went into withdrawal. You removed the supply of attention that once kept their ego inflated. Here's the thing, though. This phase can feel brutal for you, too. You might start doubting yourself. You might think, maybe they really don't care. Maybe my silence doesn't matter. But pause. That's your emotional conditioning talking. The same conditioning they benefited from. You were trained to believe that giving equals love, that silence equals loss. But Stoicism teaches us something powerful. Value doesn't come from how loudly something speaks, but from how consistently it stands. Your silence isn't a retreat, it's the restoration of your worth. Imagine a shop that used to give away gold coins for free. People would come, grab handfuls, and never look back. But one day, the shop closes, doors locked, lights off. Suddenly, the same people who ignored the value of those coins start wondering, what if that gold was real? What if I should have held on to it? That's exactly what happens when you withdraw your emotional energy. The same attention they once overlooked now becomes the thing they can't stop searching for. The universe has a quiet way of reminding people of value through absence, not abundance. And I know, my friends, it's not easy. There's a part of you that wants to check back in, to make sure they noticed, to fix what they broke. But you must understand, when you rush to prove your worth, you spend your last coin of power. Let them feel the emptiness. Let them stare at the silence and hear the echo of everything they took for granted. That's not cruelty. That's balance returning to the system. Carl Jung said, "People don't see God because they don't look low enough." In human relationships, it's the same. People don't see value until it's beneath their feet and gone. This isn't about revenge. It's about remembering what your presence is worth. When you keep showing up for someone who doesn't see you, you teach them blindness. But when you walk away, you teach them sight. The absence of your voice becomes the loudest sound they'll ever hear. And while they try to rebuild their emotional structure from the rubble of your silence, you'll notice something beautiful. You don't need to chase anymore. You don't need to prove. You've become the rarest thing in their world, the one who doesn't need them to exist. They might try to act unaffected. They might pretend your silence didn't shake them, but deep inside, their system is glitching. They're recalculating your worth, comparing every new person to the calm they lost in you. And that's the hidden truth. When you reclaim your energy, you don't lose connection. You regain control. You become the scarcity in a world addicted to noise. So hold that peace, my friends. Don't trade it for temporary validation. Don't reopen the shop for someone who never paid attention to the gold in their hands. They will come back, not because you begged, but because the silence you left behind has more gravity than their ego can escape. You've just reset the emotional market. Your value is rising again. Now, let's anchor this moment together. If this message speaks truth to you, go to the comments and write, "My energy is currency." Write it like a declaration, not a phrase. Feel it in your bones, because once you understand that your energy has value, no one can spend you freely again. Number 2. The mind panics. When predictability ends, you became their unfinished equation. My friends, let's talk about the power of unpredictability, the moment you broke their internal code. See, human beings crave patterns. We build them around everything: how someone speaks, how they react, how often they reach out. It's how the brain saves energy. Psychologists call it predictive processing. Your mind creates a model of what's coming next, based on what's always come before. And that's exactly what they did with you. They mapped you out like an equation. They knew when you'd text, how fast you'd reply, and how easily you'd forgive. You became part of their mental algorithm, predictable, reliable, and safe to ignore. But then one day, you stopped playing by their rules. You went quiet, you disrupted the pattern, and that's when everything inside their mind started to glitch. They thought they had you figured out, that you'd always come back. Every move you made had become a variable they could predict. But when you withdrew, the formula stopped working. They're trying to solve a problem that no longer has an answer. That's what cognitive interference feels like when the brain's prediction system fails. It's like a GPS stuck recalculating while driving in circles. Their ego doesn't want to admit it, but they've lost the ability to predict your behavior, and that loss feels like chaos. Because the human brain doesn't crave love first, it craves control. Now they're panicking, but it's a quiet panic, the kind that hides behind forced smiles and fake confidence. The silence you created is echoing through their subconscious, poking at every assumption they had about you. They can't predict your next move, and uncertainty breeds obsession. It's the same reason unsolved mysteries fascinate us. The mind can't stand open loops. You became that unsolved mystery, an unfinished math problem, a song that ends mid-note. They replay your last message, your last conversation, your last expression, trying to extract meaning that isn't there. They want resolution, but you've taken that away. And that loss of predictability, that's where you win your power back. You might wonder, if I meant so much, why didn't they realize it sooner? Because the human mind confuses familiarity with control. They didn't love your presence, they loved the certainty of it. It made them feel powerful to know how you'd react. But when you became unpredictable, you flipped that entire dynamic. The chaser became the one being chased, not through effort, but through silence. Carl Jung once said, "People don't have ideas. Ideas have people." Your absence has become that idea. It's possessing them quietly, pulling their attention where it never wanted to go. Back to you. You see, folks, unpredictability creates curiosity, and curiosity creates attachment. It's how our species evolved. The unknown demands focus. So when you stopped explaining, when you stopped reacting, you triggered something primal in their brain. The system that once labeled you as safe now labels you as mysterious, and mystery is the seed of desire. That's why they check your online status, even though they told themselves they're over you. That's why they stalk your posts, but never engage. They're trying to read the code again, trying to decipher a version of you that no longer fits their pattern. You became their psychological glitch, and no matter how hard they try, they can't debug it. And I know, my friends, being unpredictable feels unnatural at first. You were wired to give, to explain, to fix. That's what emotional consistency taught you, that safety equals repetition. But safety doesn't create attraction. Unpredictability does. When you stopped repeating yourself, you stopped being predictable. And when you stopped being predictable, you started being remembered. You see, peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being respected. And nothing commands respect like unpredictability. So when they wonder where you went, when they start spiraling through memories looking for patterns that no longer exist, remember this: their confusion is your confirmation. You've taken your story out of their control. You've become something their ego can't categorize. They'll keep trying to guess your next move, but the truth is, you're already 10 steps ahead, moving with calm, not chaos. You're not the old equation anymore. You're the variable they'll never solve. If this message hits home, pause right now. Go to the comments and write, "I broke the pattern." Say it out loud. Feel it in your chest. Because once you understand that your unpredictability is your power, no one can ever play you again. Number 3. You triggered emotional withdrawal. Now they're craving their own high. My friends, what you need to understand next is this. People don't just get addicted to your attention emotionally, they get addicted to it chemically. Every text, every call, every bit of reassurance you gave them wasn't just comfort. It was a dopamine hit. You became their emotional substance, their personal high. Your words gave them little bursts of validation, of control, of feeling desired. Each time you replied, it confirmed that they still had access to your world. And like all addicts, they mistook access for security. But the moment you went silent, you triggered something powerful: withdrawal. They thought they could walk away untouched, but now they're trembling inside their own mind, craving the very peace they once took for granted. You see, human relationships often operate like psychological casinos. Every time you reach out, you're pulling a lever. Sometimes you get connection, sometimes rejection, but that uncertainty itself is addictive. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, the same principle that keeps people glued to slot machines. The unpredictability of your attention gave their ego little rushes of anticipation and relief. When you were available, they got their fix. When you pulled away, they got anxious, but they still knew you'd return. That rhythm became their emotional heartbeat, and when that beat stopped, when you went silent, it created a vacuum. Their mind, which had built a tolerance to your presence, suddenly went into craving mode. Now they're replaying your old texts, scrolling through your photos, revisiting memories like a junkie looking for scraps of the past. That's not nostalgia, that's a chemical search. Each memory gives them a small hit. Not enough to satisfy, just enough to remind them how good it used to feel. They're not missing you in the way they tell themselves. They're missing the chemical reaction their body had when your name appeared on their screen. Your energy was their drug, and now that it's gone, their nervous system is screaming for more. They might try to replace you quickly, they might talk to new people, chase new validation, or pretend they've moved on. But here's what they don't realize: addiction doesn't disappear when the source changes. It transfers, and replacements never hit the same. Because what they were addicted to wasn't just your words, it was the way you made them feel about themselves. You were their mirror, reflecting back a version of them they wanted to believe in. And when you withdrew, that mirror shattered. Now they're staring at distorted reflections, trying to find the same feeling and failing every time. They might not admit it, but deep down, they're restless. They can't sleep as well, can't focus like before. Their mood swings without reason. That's not coincidence, that's chemical confusion. Their brain built pathways around the dopamine highs you gave, and now those paths are empty highways. Silence is rewiring them, forcing their mind to detox from the illusion of control. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Right now, they're calling it fate, that nothing feels right anymore. But really, it's withdrawal. Their body is begging for a feeling you've stopped supplying. I know what some of you might be thinking. If they're craving me, why don't they just reach out? Because addiction always hides behind pride. They don't want to admit they need the same energy they once dismissed. So instead, they cope in silence, trying to prove they can live without you. But silence is a detox chamber, my friends. It doesn't lie. Every minute that passes, they're forced to sit with the emptiness they created. You removed the source, and now the symptoms are surfacing. Their irritability, their impulsive behavior, their sudden nostalgia. It's all part of the withdrawal cycle. So don't break your silence. Don't rush to ease their discomfort. Let them sweat through it, because the longer you stay quiet, the more the nervous system demands what it lost. That's the irony of detachment. The less you do, the more power you gain. You're not punishing them, you're rebalancing the energy. They used to treat your presence like air. Now they're realizing how cold it feels without it. And when that craving peaks, they'll remember the calm, the warmth, the validation that only you brought. Not because you begged to be remembered, but because you became the only source of peace their system ever truly trusted. If you feel this truth sinking in, take a second and own it. Go to the comments and write, "My silence resets their mind." Type it like a promise to yourself, because when you understand how powerful your absence truly is, you stop chasing and start healing. Number 4, you disappeared from their attention feed, and that created a phantom effect. My friends, when you disappeared from their world, you didn't just leave silence behind, you left a shadow. And the human mind, when faced with sudden loss, doesn't simply erase, it recreates. Psychologists call this the phantom presence phenomenon. When someone is suddenly gone from our emotional field, the brain refuses to accept it. It begins to simulate their presence through fragments, memories, sounds, and sensations. It's the same way people who lose a limb still feel it itching. The mind holds on to what once was, even when it's no longer there. That's what's happening to them right now. You're gone, but they still feel you. You're not texting, but they hear your voice in the quiet. You're not looking at their stories, but they still sense you watching. You became their phantom, an emotional ghost haunting their waking life. You used to occupy space in their attention feed. You were part of their daily scroll, your name, your words, your energy. Then, suddenly, nothing. And when that silence hit, the mind didn't know how to file it. It kept reaching out for signals that no longer existed. That's how memory works. It's not stored in logic, it's stored in emotion. So when emotional bonds break abruptly, the subconscious starts to fill the gaps. They begin to feel your presence in random places. A song plays, and it feels like you chose it. A phrase comes up in a conversation, and it sounds like something you'd say. These are phantom stimuli, echoes of you still bouncing around in their nervous system. You see, folks, attention is like gravity. When you give someone enough of it, you bend the space around them. You become part of their sensory reality. Your tone, your scent, your rhythm of speech, all of it imprints. And when you vanish, that gravity doesn't just disappear, it leaves a vacuum. The mind rushes to fill it with imagined versions of you. That's why they find themselves thinking, "I wonder what they'd say about this." Or, "I can almost hear their laugh." It's not madness, it's the emotional residue you left behind. The body remembers, the psyche remembers. And that's something silence cannot erase. Carl Jung once said that the things we repress don't disappear. They live in the shadows. Right now, you've become that shadow in their story. They tried to bury the thought of you, but it keeps resurfacing through triggers they can't control. You're not in their contact list anymore, but you're in their emotional muscle memory. Every time they encounter something familiar, a movie you watched, a cafe you loved, a quote you once said, they feel that ghostly tug. You've become what neuroscientists call a sensory imprint. It's the emotional version of perfume lingering after someone leaves the room. They can't see you, but the air still carries your name. And here's the irony, they think they've moved on, but their body betrays them. Their heart skips when your name appears somewhere unexpected. Their chest tightens when they see someone who looks like you. That's not coincidence, it's conditioning. You trained their nervous system to react to your presence, and that training doesn't disappear overnight. They might tell themselves you don't matter, but the phantom you built inside them keeps whispering otherwise. It's the echo they can't mute. You might ask, But if I'm haunting their thoughts, does that mean I'm still trapped too? No, my friends, there's a difference between haunting and healing. You're not clinging to them. They're clinging to the version of you their mind refuses to let go of. Your silence created psychological permanence. You're no longer physically present, but emotionally you've become everywhere. And that's the paradox of absence. It multiplies your presence. The less they see of you, the more they feel you. So when you catch yourself wondering if they forgot you, remember this truth. The mind doesn't delete emotional fingerprints. It only smudges them with time. And the ones you left? They're not fading. They're deepening. Every day your silence continues. You're reinforced in their memory, not erased. You've become a quiet ghost who doesn't need to speak to be heard. If this truth resonates with you, my friends, don't just scroll past it. Anchor it. Go to the comments right now and write, "I became the echo they can't escape." Say it like you mean it, because your energy didn't vanish. It transformed. You're not chasing anyone anymore. You're not proving your worth. You've become the memory that walks beside them in silence. Number 5. They're rewriting the story because the ego can't handle not being chosen. My friends, when someone's ego gets bruised, it doesn't heal with honesty, it heals with fiction. The human mind can't stand the feeling of being rejected, of losing control, of not being chosen. So when you walked away and stayed silent, they didn't just lose you. They lost the version of themselves that felt powerful in your eyes. And that's when something interesting happens. The rewriting begins. Psychologists call it retrospective narrative bias. It's the ego's favorite defense mechanism. When reality hurts too much, the mind edits the past to make survival easier. Now they're retelling your story, my friends, not because they've forgotten the truth, but because the truth burns. They can't face the fact that someone they once looked down on found the strength to walk away. So, to protect their pride, they twist the timeline. Suddenly, you were the distant one. You were the cold one. You were the problem. They create this new version of events where they were the hero and you were the heartless one. It's not truth. It's ego CPR. They're trying to resuscitate their self-worth by painting you as indifferent. You see, the ego is allergic to accountability. It can't say, "I lost something real because I took it for granted." Instead, it says, "They never cared anyway." That's projection, pure and simple. They're taking their guilt and draping it over your shoulders because it's easier to hate you than to face themselves. It's easier to label you cold than to admit they froze the relationship first. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But they're not ready for that understanding yet, so they run from it by rewriting history. Think of it like this. You were a masterpiece they didn't appreciate. Now that you're gone, they can't stand to look at what they lost. So they take a brush and start painting over it. They tell their friends a watered-down version of your story, one that makes them look strong and makes you look detached. But deep down, every stroke of that lie is painted in guilt. They're not rewriting the story because you meant nothing. They're rewriting it because you meant too much. The real version makes them feel exposed. The real version reminds them that they had something rare and couldn't handle it. And here's where your silence strikes again. You're not arguing, you're not defending, you're letting them tell whatever story their ego needs to survive. That's the ultimate power move, my friends. When you don't correct their lies, they eventually suffocate in them. Every false narrative they tell buys them temporary comfort, but it also keeps your truth alive inside them. Because even if they deny it publicly, they replay it privately. They know the truth of how patient you were, how forgiving you were, how much you tried. They can distort memory, but they can't erase emotional residue. That stays. That burns. What they're doing is called cognitive reframing. It's a trick the brain uses to protect identity. They can't see themselves as the villain, so they turn you into one. But that's not your burden to carry. Don't waste your peace trying to prove your innocence in stories you've already outgrown. Let them tell their edited version. You're living the sequel, and they're stuck in reruns. The truth doesn't need defense, it just needs time. And let's be honest, part of you might still feel angry that they're twisting the story. That's natural. You want them to acknowledge the truth, to own what they did. But my friends, you don't need their validation anymore. Stoicism teaches us that perception belongs to them, but peace belongs to you. Let them draw you as cold. You know your warmth. Let them call you heartless. You know your compassion. You're not the villain of their narrative. You're the lesson they're not ready to face. So the next time they act like you never mattered, smile quietly to yourself. Because people only rewrite history when reality was too powerful to accept. If they truly felt nothing, they wouldn't need to invent a story to numb the pain. Your silence forced them to meet the truth, and instead of healing, they ran from it. But the truth always catches up, and when it does, it won't whisper, it'll roar. If you feel this truth, if you see through the stories they're spinning, go to the comments right now and write, "The truth doesn't need editing." Let that be your reminder. You don't need to prove anything to anyone who lies to themselves for comfort. Number 6. Silence exposed their inner noise. Now they're arguing with themselves. My friends, there comes a moment after silence where the real battle doesn't happen between two people. It happens inside one mind. When you stop explaining, stop reacting, stop defending, the noise doesn't disappear. It just changes direction. It turns inward. That's what's happening to them right now. You see, when there's no one left to argue with, the mind starts arguing with itself. That's what psychologists call internal dialogue inversion. You didn't leave them alone, you left them with themselves, and that's a far more terrifying opponent than you ever were. Before, your voice used to guide their chaos. You'd reason with them, calm them down, or challenge their arrogance. But now that you're gone, their brain has started filling the silence with a phantom version of you. They catch themselves replaying old conversations, debating with the memory of you, trying to rewrite how it ended. They rehearse imaginary scenarios, what they should have said, what they wish they'd done differently. That's displacement at work, my friends. The mind hates stillness because stillness exposes guilt, and guilt is loud when there's no distraction. You see, people don't realize how much your voice becomes part of their inner landscape until it's gone. You were the balance in their storm. You were the one who absorbed their defensiveness, their projections, their outbursts. And now that buffer is gone. So every word they once threw at you is echoing back at them. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's what's happening. They're finally meeting their unconscious and it's wearing your voice. They're having the same arguments they once forced on you, only now there's no one left to blame. Every accusation, every justification, every half-truth they use to escape accountability is now circling back in their head. It's strange, isn't it, how they once claimed they wanted peace, but when peace arrived, they couldn't stand it. Because silence doesn't protect the ego, it exposes it. They thought removing you would remove the tension, but it removed their reflection instead. And now, without your calm presence to absorb the damage, they're left wrestling with the truth they avoided. That's the beauty of Stoic detachment, my friends. It doesn't punish, it reveals. Your silence became a mirror, and that mirror doesn't flatter. They're probably walking around pretending they're fine, smiling, joking, maybe even posting online like life's great. But behind that mask, they're exhausted. They're waking up in the middle of the night, thinking about things they said to you. They're remembering the tone in your voice when you finally went quiet. The mind doesn't erase echoes. It amplifies them in the dark. You're not haunting them through action. You're haunting them through absence. You stopped talking, so their conscience started mimicking your voice. That's the phantom dialogue of regret. And the most ironic part? The same silence they once accused you of using to punish them is now the silence they'd do anything to break. But you're not available anymore. You've moved from conversation to observation. You're the stillness they can't shake, the peace they can't match. You've become a mirror so clear it scares them to look at it. Because when they do, they don't just see you. They see everything they became in your absence. You might wonder, will they ever admit it? Maybe not out loud. But admission doesn't always come through words. It comes through change. They'll start treating others differently. They'll start hesitating before saying something cruel. They'll start remembering the quiet weight of your silence every time they're tempted to repeat the same mistake. And that's how your absence keeps teaching long after you've stopped speaking. So hold your silence, my friends. Don't shatter the mirror just because they're uncomfortable looking into it. Let them argue with themselves. Let them meet their own reflection. Because the truth is, you don't need to win a conversation that's already happening in their head. You already won by walking away from it. If this truth hits home for you, take a second and write it in the comments. My silence speaks truth. Say it with certainty, because your stillness isn't empty, it's a classroom. And right now, they're learning every lesson they refused to hear when you were still talking. Number 7, they're testing you in subtle ways, the signal and wait tactic. My friends, silence changes everything. It shifts the entire balance of power without you saying a single word. And now that you've stopped feeding their ego with attention, they're scrambling to regain control, but not in obvious ways. They won't send a message saying, "I miss you." No, their ego won't allow that. Instead, they use what I call micro-baiting, a psychological trick where they throw out small signals into the digital air, hoping you'll bite. It's not communication, it's testing. It's the signal and wait tactic. You've probably seen it before, a random story that feels oddly familiar, a quote that sounds like something you once said, a vague post that could easily be about you but never mentions your name. That's not coincidence, my friends, that's strategy. They're leaving crumbs, emotional hints, and hoping your curiosity will make you reach out. It's operant conditioning, the same behavioral loop that keeps people checking notifications, waiting for reactions. They're not posting for the world, they're posting for you. Because deep down, they need to know if you're still watching. They're fishing for reassurance in an empty sea. Each post is a cast, each silence from you a wave that swallows their bait whole. They scroll through their own stories, waiting to see your name on the viewer list. And when it's not there, that tiny hit of panic sets in. The ego hates being unseen. They used to feel powerful knowing you'd respond, knowing they could trigger emotion with a word. But now you've gone quiet, and that unpredictability drives them insane. Here's the thing. People who lose control over someone's attention start creating little traps to get it back. It's instinct, The human brain is wired to seek reward after loss, and your attention used to be their greatest prize. That's why they'll suddenly start remembering things you did together. That throwback post? That's not nostalgia, it's bait. They want you to see it, to wonder if it means something. They'll even test you with indirect communication, liking old pictures, replying to mutual friends, dropping subtle lines designed to stir curiosity. They're not trying to reconnect from love. They're trying to see if the hook still fits. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And that's exactly what's happening here. Instead of sitting in the discomfort of losing you, they're distracting themselves with attention games. But what they don't realize is that these signals reveal far more than silence ever could. Every accidental post, every subtle story, every cryptic line is a panic call wrapped in pride. They're not over you. They're orbiting around your energy, trying to provoke a reaction that proves they still matter. You might feel tempted to respond, my friends. You might think, maybe they're finally reaching out. But no, this isn't a bridge, it's a lure. When you react, you feed the same cycle that used to drain you. The moment you respond, they'll pull back again, just to prove they can still control your attention. That's how operant conditioning works. They reward you with breadcrumbs, and you keep chasing the illusion of closure. But you're not chasing anymore. You've already broken the loop. Let them cast their lines into silence. Let them talk to their own shadows online. Your lack of reaction is the storm that wrecks their strategy, because every time you don't respond, you remind them that your peace can't be baited. You're not playing their game anymore. You've outgrown it. And the more they try to fish for your validation, the more obvious it becomes that they're the ones drowning. So when you see that cryptic post, smile. You don't need to decode it. You already understand it. It's fear disguised as confidence. It's regret hiding behind ego. And your silence? It's the mirror reflecting their desperation back to them. If you feel this truth deep in your gut, write it down right now in the comments. I don't chase crumbs. Say it, own it, believe it. Because you're not here to feed someone's ego anymore. You're here to protect your peace. Number 8. You're no longer the same character in their story. You became the plot twist. My friends, here's where the story truly flips. You were once the character they thought they understood, the predictable one, the comfort zone, the one who stayed no matter how many times they tested the limits. But when you went silent, you didn't just disappear, you rewrote your role. You went from being the one who chased to the one who vanished, and that single shift changed the entire storyline. In psychology, we call this identity transference, when a person's perception of someone changes so dramatically that it destabilizes their emotional structure. You were supposed to stay in your role. You were supposed to keep feeding the pattern, but you didn't. And now, their story no longer makes sense without you. They used to see you as the steady one, the background constant holding the scene together. They knew your script. You'd always text back, always forgive, always show up. But now, you've broken character. You left the stage mid-scene, and they're still standing there with their lines memorized, waiting for a cue that will never come. That's what happens when you take control of your narrative. You stop being a chapter in their book and become the plot twist they didn't see coming, the one that changes everything in hindsight. Here's the thing, my friends. Humans build attachment systems based on patterns. Every relationship, healthy or toxic, has a rhythm. One gives, one takes, one chases, one hides. And as long as that rhythm continues, the mind feels safe, even in dysfunction. But when one person changes the beat, it disrupts everything. Your silence didn't just remove your voice, it removed the balance their ego relied on. Now they're in emotional freefall, trying to reframe the story without you in it. But it doesn't work, because the person they thought was predictable turned out to be the one with the most control. They're going back through every memory, reinterpreting moments, questioning everything they assumed. Maybe they never needed me the way I thought. Maybe they were stronger than I realized. That's identity reversal. The mind scrambling to redefine you in a story that no longer fits the old version. You used to be their emotional anchor. Now you're the storm that woke them up. They tried to erase you from their movie, but now you've become the closing scene, the one they keep replaying at night when everything's quiet. The irony is poetic. When you were available, they saw you as ordinary. When you became unavailable, they started seeing you as legendary. That's the paradox of attachment. The moment you stop chasing, you start haunting. You're not in their life anymore, but you live in their analysis of it. Every decision they make now carries the shadow of you. You're no longer a person to them. You're an idea, a what-if, a symbol of something they can't categorize. You've transcended the emotional role they assigned you. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Right now, you are their unconscious realization. You represent the part of them that took too much and lost everything. They might tell themselves they're over you, but the mind doesn't lie. It just represses what it can't resolve. And what they can't resolve is you, the one who slipped through their fingers while they were too busy trying to look powerful. But here's what I want you to remember, my friends. You didn't lose your place in their story. You outgrew it. You didn't fade out. You evolved. You stopped being a character and became the message. That's what true transformation looks like. When your silence becomes their teacher. When your absence becomes their closure. When your name stops being spoken, but your energy still lingers in every reflection they try to escape. So if you ever wonder whether they forgot you, don't. They didn't. They can't. You're not a memory. You're a mirror. You're the quiet truth that their ego keeps trying to rewrite but can't erase. You're the one that made them realize the story was never about control. It was about awakening. If you feel that truth in your chest right now, take a second and write it in the comments. I became the plot twist. Because that's exactly what you did. You changed the narrative. You flipped the power dynamic. You walked off the stage, and somehow your silence became the entire show. So press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because you're not the same character anymore, my friends. You're the ending they'll never stop replaying.